Hello, citizen of Kenshi. Have you ever longed for a place that you do not yet know? A place that feels like home? A place where you can lay your head down at night in safety with food in your belly? You may not know this place, but you do know that it is out there. Hawks contemplated these thoughts often, trying to fill the deep emptiness with alcohol and meaningless labor. But then one day, the labor disappeared as a local noble ordered him fired. Perhaps he hadn't gotten out of the way fast enough as the noble approached in the streets one day. Or perhaps the noble knew a friend's son that needed work. Whatever the case, for a short while, Hawks knew freedom. But he was still confined to these walls, the walls of Show Bai, a dreary, dead place in the middle of a great desert. Surely beyond these walls, perhaps even beyond these deserts, there was a place that offered more freedom, more something. But these were crazy thoughts. The sands beyond those walls were wrought with danger, bandits, wild animals, and heartless slavers who would in a heartbeat slap chains on Hawks and sell him to the nearest market. He was far safer within these walls. But with his high-profile job lost, he now had to resort to skinning animals to scrape a meager living. He smelled of death every night as he crawled into a bed at the inn, for his home had been seized by the authorities for lack of payment. It was here at this inn that he met a sheikh named Ells. The man was a rum fiend. He drank himself into a stupor every night, seemingly trying his best to die a young man. One night they talked, and it was in this conversation that Hawks discovered that he was not the only one who sought a home he never knew. Drunk and high off of the prospect of making a new lifelong friend, the two agreed to brave the deserts together. It was likely an empty promise, as most drunk promises are, but the next morning, both of these men felt compelled to see the promise through, and so they pooled their money and bought what scrap gear they could, and headed out into the deserts. It didn't take long for them to run into trouble, meeting the vicious wildlife of this endless desert. A bone dog almost ripped Hawks' leg off, and so back they went to recover in Show Bai. They tried again, but were this time accosted by a so-called city hero. This man attacked them viciously, completely disregarding the law. Thankfully, guards spotted the transgression and beat the shit out of him, and rightfully so. Hawks and Ells proceeded to loot his belongings and then return to the inn for another night of recovery. Why couldn't they catch a break? Why couldn't they just get out of this god-forsaken place? As Hawks lay in bed recovering yet again, he promised to himself to never give up. Even if it killed him, they would make it out. They tried once more, and this time they managed to avoid the myriad dangers that inhabited these deserts. They dodged skimmers and bandits, remaining largely unseen. And finally, they reached Stoat, the first stop on their journey to wherever it was they were going or seeking. What was it they were seeking? Freedom? A sense of belonging? They weren't even sure yet what home even meant. But Stoat was not the home they sought. It was a hellhole worse than Show Bai. Combat erupted in the streets regularly, indicative of the severe unrest in the hearts of the citizens. Hawks and Ells even got into a fight with some vagrants one day while exploring the outskirts of the city. Hawks got the shit kicked out of him again, but Ells had changed. He was getting stronger fast, and he stood and fought. And won. It was a momentous victory for Ells, who experienced a surge of adrenaline and dopamine that put the rum high to shame. Perhaps he would fight instead of drink. Fight for good, for justice, for the impoverished citizens of the United Cities. But perhaps starting tomorrow. They rested up again, and to our hero's luck, they met with a trader one day. This trader was on his way to hang. Hawks, thinking quickly, told the trader that they were heading in the same direction, and that they would be happy to lend their blades to help defend the caravan. The merchant happily agreed, keen to have 2 extra guards escorting his caravan for free. Little did he know that it was he and his guards that were escorting Hawks and Ells, the crafty bastards. And so they traveled through the desert in relative safety, finally reaching Heng, the capital city. It was an impressive sight. It was the largest city Hawks had ever laid eyes on. Perhaps here he would find a true home. But alas, violence filled the streets of Heng as well. The unrest would never end. The United Cities would surely fall under the crushing oppression of the noble rule, and Hawks wanted no part of it. He did not want to take on the samurai guards, nor did he want to cut down his fellow citizens. It was time to leave the United Cities behind him and seek greener pastures. In the bar one night, they met an old man who told them about the most verdant green valley in all of the world. He told them that water flowed openly for anyone to drink or bathe in. Crops grew everywhere, lush, green crops, not the dusty crap from the desert. But most intriguing of all, he told them about the wonderful people who lived there. They were a faithful bunch who gave thanks and treated their fellow man with kindness and respect that one could find nowhere else on all of this planet. It sounded like a utopia, but Hawks knew better. He told Ells that the man was smoking something really strong, that such a place surely couldn't exist. But Ells had hope. He wanted to seek out the Greenland with its warm and welcoming people, but to do that, they would have to brave the skim sands. But they were no longer the useless couple of drunkards they once were. The fat around their tummies was shrinking, their legs became stronger, their lungs expanded, and so with this in mind, they decided to cross the skim sands and find this promised land. There were skimmers everywhere, but they were now also too slow to keep up with our heroes. They were becoming true athletes. It was a long journey, but they made it, and saw the first glorious signs of this fabled empire. It was real, after all. They passed the guards without issue. They were even greeted as brothers. Ells swore one man called him a foul beast, but Hawks was sure that he only imagined it. Perhaps the man was talking about something else, like his smelly goat back at home or something. They restocked on supplies and headed further west towards the green valleys the old man had spoken of. It wasn't long before they stumbled upon the most amazing sight. It was more yellow than green, but it was the greenest thing Hawks had ever seen. They stared over this new land in awe. Water really did flow across the land. Finally, might this become a place to call home? Will Hawks finally discover what a real home feels like? Or are there skeletons beneath these green pastures just waiting to reveal themselves? Our pair soon discovered that there were more than just metaphorical skeletons buried beneath these pastures. A holy brother approached them, but addressed Ells instead of Hawks. After a short and very aggressive conversation, the so-called holy men attacked them. Without thinking, they ran. They knew they had no chance against the guards. These guards were extreme athletes though. They kept up with Ells like he was on a slow Sunday jog. After a few hits, they knocked him out. Thankfully, they were distracted by something else. Probably a brothel, the filthy hypocrites. Whatever it was a blessing from above, and Hawks could tend to Ells' wounds to help him up. They kept running and left this so-called promised land behind them. It was every bit as violent as the deserts of home, and apparently much of that violence was racially motivated towards the Shek people. Hawks felt a sense of loss at this realization. Everyone had been so friendly up to this point. Why did they have to be a nation of bigots, threatening the very life of his friend, if they chose to stay in this beautiful valley? These thoughts were soon driven from his mind as they reached a really foggy place. Threatening shadows moved behind the fog and made the hair on Hawks' arms and neck stand on end. Whatever was in that fog was not good news, so the pair decided to turn back and head south. Perhaps they could reach the southern parts of the United Cities. At least there, Ells would be accepted. But they needed rest, and the closest place they found had no beds available. So they pushed on, and in the distance they saw another town. Hoping that it wasn't another Holy Nation outpost, they pressed forward. The town was in total disrepair, but the bar had beds available, and so the pair rested gratefully. The next morning, they spoke to some locals and discovered this place was called the Hub, and it was a bastion for enemies of the Holy Nation. Now that sounded as close to a home as Hawks had heard for a while. And so they stayed and did what part-time work they could to survive. They made friends with some locals too, like this man named Kenshi. He was an ex-cook for the Holy Nation and dreamed of running the best kitchen this side of World's End. Hawks couldn't help him with that dream, but Kenshi had some cool cooking stories. Like the time he attempted to cook a skeleton heart for a holy general. The general choked and died, and that's kinda why Kenshi is hiding out here. Then they met another lady who seemed obsessed with protecting asses for cats. She wouldn't shut up about it, and whenever they spoke to her, she kept banging on about fighting. It's all she could talk about. They decided to hire her anyway, in an attempt to shut her up, yes, but it would be good to have a capable fighter on the team. And finally, we met a man named Hotlongs. What a strange name. He claimed to be from a faraway city that had been besieged by enemies, so he was on the run and ended up here. How he had made it across the deserts and everything was beyond Hawks, but he offered the man sanctuary as a part of their growing crew, and he gladly accepted. The five of them grew close and even got into a bar fight one night. You know what they say, families that fight together stay together or something. Overall, they now had friends and a home or something like it, but the little rundown town was often attacked by bandits, and Hawks wanted to do his part and help defend the hub. They would have to learn to fight, and he knew just the person to help. Have Hawks and Ells found a forever home? It was dreary and dull in the hub, but they were surrounded by friends who didn't care how many cats they made. They were also surrounded by friends who were pure of heart and not trying to trick them into buying something or investing in some scheme. It was no paradise, but at least for now, they had a home worth fighting for. And isn't that sometimes enough? Hey, it's Kyle here. I hope you enjoyed that. It was an absolute blast to make. I didn't want to break your immersion by putting this in the main video, but check this out. So, I'm busy training my guys, and Hotlongs somehow loses a leg to the Dust Bandits. I decide to go into Vane to try and find a replacement, and oh my holy soul, I have never seen chaos like this in a city. Enjoy. Wasn't recording because I was just training the guys up, and I may have walked into the most chaotic scene I have ever witnessed in Kenshi. Check this out. There's a what is this? A bull flying through the air? Let me just. Okay, yeah, no, he's stuck in the air. There's a bull over there. There's an elder beak thing. Just beating the shit out of everything in its sight. There are downed people everywhere. There's bone dogs and hivers and slave traders. I have never seen anything like this in my life before. It's absolute chaos. There's a wild hyena in the mix, a wild bull. What is going on? Look at this. There's a gorilla in the mix here somewhere. There's people as far as I go, just people and bulls and what is this madness? There's a nomad. It's just lying on the floor dead. It's wow. It's chaos. It's absolute chaos. So I go to the bar, right? Because I think, oh, things should be pretty chill in the bar. Nope. There's a dead guy. There's people fighting everywhere. It's, oh my. Slavers running around fighting against the hivers. I don't know if they have beef with each other, but it's absolute chaos. I've never seen chaos to this scale before. In the fields, the slave dogs are fighting workers, and there's just... What the shit. Crazy, right? Anyway, you are amazing for watching this deep into the video. Give yourself a pat on the back from me, please. No, really do it now. I'm waiting. Good job. You lasted a whole 20 minutes with my boring ass voice. I'll see you for the next episode where we'll continue the story of our unlikely heroes. Have a lovely day.